led these things in their history, in the various times and places in which the nation found itself. And so our Father, at the very least we know, would raise to the table, to the surface, this idea of the one who authors it, the one who is behind it all, the one who owns this house, the one who runs this house. And the house of the Jew was the world. The world was God's and everything in it. And they were specifically the household of God, and they knew that they had a specific responsibility and task in helping God run this house and run it well. And so he says, our Father in heaven. Remember, the word in heaven represents what we might say the ideal. It represents how things should be where God is. And where God is, His will is done. Where God is, things are running and functioning the way that God wants them. And it's the best. It's in our best interest. And we know this because His name is holy. Now remember the term name. Name wasn't just like your last name. It wasn't just like, like nowadays, what do we do when we choose our baby's names? How many people got the baby book names, right, for girls and boys? And you scroll through that thing. And you try to pick a name that not anybody else uses, right? But if everybody does that, there's no unique names anymore, right? So we make names up nowadays. But a name was just, you think about, this is it. This is their name forever and ever, right? For their whole lives. So it just carries some weight, but nothing compared to what it did in ancient times. Your name was your identity. And more than just your picture and the name that allowed people to see who you were and put a face to a name. No, way much more. Way much more. Your name, your identity was wrapped up in it. Who you were, what the world expected of you, what your responsibilities were, the role that you would play in your family. They didn't have last names, remember that. You were born with it. Who you were going to be you were told that. You didn't have time to choose. You weren't given the luxury to choose. If your father was a farmer and you decided that you wanted to be a musician, guess what? You brought shame upon your family. You brought shame upon your name, because what you're saying is, this isn't good enough for me. There's something wrong with this over here. You got to remember the culture and the way in which they lived, and there are cultures today that are very similar to this. Okay, very similar. This is the culture in which these people are accustomed to. A name. And your name was your identity. It said a lot about who you were, your character, and how you ran the house. And they say, your name is holy. Which means what? Your character is holy and is pure. And we know that you have our best interests. We know the way you want things done is for the best. We acknowledge that. So pray like this: our Father, or to the one who runs this house. We acknowledge that things aren't here the way that they should be. Things aren't always unfolding the way that you want them to. And we acknowledge the role we play in that. And we acknowledge that this should be the way they are because of who you are, your character. It's holy. It's holy. But remember, all of this was directly connected to them and realizing that they believed that their calling was holy. It was specific and it was special among all of the nations. No one else was chosen like them in their minds. And so this is coming out. This is the backdrop out of which this prayer comes. And so Jesus says, pray then like this: our Father in heaven, holy is your name. That right there, that phrase, holy is your name, would have reached back in time all the way to the freedom from Egypt and the laws that were given. And one of those 10 commandments was what? Do not take the Lord your God's name in vain. And I think this is extremely important because this ties into where the Jews are coming from. It takes you all the way back to Exodus chapter 20, verse number 7. It says, "You shall not take the Lord your God's name in vain." And we say take, we think that means cussing or using God's name in a sentence that's not necessarily a good thing either, but that's not what it's talking about. Literally, the word take is to pick something up and carry it. And the law was to help them understand how they were now to function as people who were free. They were slaves for so long. How do you live like freed people and not oppress other people? The laws were meant to help them understand how to do this. And in doing so, he says, as you carry this forward, understanding that you reflect me, we have a covenant relationship here. You have a responsibility here. This is going to teach the world. This is going to teach the nations of what this looks like. And as you go forward and you carry my name, has everything to do with your conduct. Make sure when you say that you follow me, that you mirror me, that you reflect me, you make sure that your conduct actually does mirror me and reflect me. Take you all the way back to the New Testament when Paul says, listen to this. If you do these things and you do it without love, it's in vain. It's the same picture. God is love. You don't conduct yourself in such a way that demonstrates and reflects love, guess what? You're carrying his name in vain. That's the picture there. And so, how they lived, the role they played, how they fulfilled their responsibility in this covenant was important and it mattered. And they understood that they had a role in the house as servants. And things weren't working out very well. From their perspective, things they weren't as they should be. So teach us what is most important. What's our role? Help us see. So Jesus says, we might say, to the one who runs this house, we acknowledge it's yours. You're the author of it. You're behind it all. And how you want things is for the best. But we acknowledge that how things are turning out, it's not according to the way that you would have them. And we realize that that's the best way because of who you are. And then you have this phrase. May your kingdom come. May your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That is where you are, around you. Don't think of another time and place. Think of being literally in the presence of God, where things will unfold in a system of justice and righteousness, and as a result there will be peace. No oppression. So, let's break these words down. When Jesus says he says, pray this, your kingdom come. He's talking about a kingdom coming, something coming. Now we have all sorts of ideas about what the kingdom is and what it's not. Throw that all off the table. What would they have thought? What was in their mind? What did it mean for a kingdom to be coming? You know what that meant? War. It meant power. It meant expansion of empire. You know what expansion of empire looked like? Devastation, oppression, greed, death to all those who were caught in the middle of it. And what would happen is people who controlled kingdoms were all about reordering the world that best fit themselves. And you were just kind of caught in the middle of it. Back and forth. The Jews always seem to be in the middle of this, right? So when Jesus said the term kingdom, it's a loaded word. It's a political term. And then to talk about a kingdom coming, oh, be careful where you talk about this. Be careful how you talk about this. Be careful to whom you talk about this. Because you're talking about some other power coming in and taking over. It's volatile. It's insurrection. And Jesus is doing this all under the nose of Herod Antipas. Herod Antipas, who is the king of Galilee, where Jesus did the majority of his ministry. And in fact, I find there's this interesting part where in Luke chapter 13, verse 31, the Pharisees actually come to Jesus and say, hey, you might want to get out of here because Herod wants your life. He wants you to die. He wants you dead. The Pharisees come and warn Jesus, which tells you, number one, you don't know everything you think you know about the Pharisees, and you can't paint a broad brush about all the Pharisees, because there were some who wanted to kill Jesus, and there were others who were saying, hey, you better get out of here because your life is going to be destroyed. The Pharisees come and say, hey, you need to go. And so therefore Jesus goes from town to town and village to village. He seems to always be on the move, preaching this message of the kingdom. Now, with the kingdom came armies, and Herod had a massive army. And Herod did not think twice about cutting you down. If he even thought that you might be a threat to him, you were gone. No questions asked. This is the volatile situation in which Jesus is preaching. And preaching nonetheless this message of the kingdom. But here's the difference. while they would have understood kingdoms coming with violence and oppression and armies and greed and power, and it's all about rearranging and reordering villages and towns and structures and lands to best suit those who were in power. Jesus says this kingdom is different. He's already talked about it. This is Matthew 6. Go back and read Matthew 5, leading up to this point. This kingdom, though, it will not come with violence. In fact, this reordering of things is about responding in a different way to receive a different outcome. Which is why Jesus says things like this: turn the other cheek. And what that means. And why he says, you've heard it said, eye for an eye and tooth for tooth, but I tell you, love your enemies. Pray for those people. Respond differently, because violence begets violence. When somebody is snarky with you, what's your first gut reaction? You're going to get it back, but you're going to do one up. Right? It's like you're teasing them, you're saying, bring it. Right? Somebody looks at you and ladies, somebody gives you the eye. How do you respond? You give them both eyes. Right? You give them the stink eye, right? But Jesus said, listen. There's a way to respond differently that's going to bring out a totally different outcome. And that's more in line with the way things should be. And so when Jesus says you pray this way, your kingdom, it's not only acknowledging the ones who's behind this, but it's also acknowledging that the way things are here are not according to the way things should be or would be. There's something wrong. Then he says, your kingdom come. Your will be done. The term will here deals with the idea of something you've inspired, something you have determined, something you have chosen, your desires for things to be a certain way. And so it's acknowledging all about Him. Look, our Father, we acknowledge you're behind all of this. We acknowledge that you've authored this, that you own this, that it's yours, and that the way you want things done is for the best because of who you are, your name, holy. So may your kingdom come. May your will be done. May things be here as you would have them where you are. So may you be here. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. It's not about what happens next. It's not about where you go when you die. This prayer is not about some other time in some other place. This prayer is about, may right here in this moment, right now, be like it is where you are. Your will, your kingdom. May things be reordered and structured in such a way that people will know that you are here, that you run this house, because things as we see it are not right. How many people watched football last night? Raise your hand. You know you watching the LSU Tigers. That's who you want. That wasn't much of a game. I mean, when you got it, you got it. Okay. How many of you saw the break-in of the shootings? How many? Just like every day there's something. Every day there's something else. And I don't care what you think about what's the cause and what's the effect and gun control and this political party. And scrap all of that. Every day there's something else. And the things that we think we have in place to control that, to bring about a change, those things don't work. How's that working for us? How's it working for us? Are you getting uncomfortable yet? How's that working for us? It's not working. It's not working because that's not meant to bring about the change that's meant to be here. Who's meant to bring about the change? People, us, individuals, us, where we live and move and have our very existence in Him. We are meant to help bring about the change. we're putting expectations on things that are never meant to carry those burdens. We are part of the yoke. Remember the yoke? Remember that term? It literally means the bar between the balances. It connects you to something. It helps to weigh out things. And things aren't right. And we know that they're not right. Now, if you're just waiting, you think that you've got your bus ticket punched and you're just waiting to leave this world, you're missing the point. You're missing it. Let things be done here as they are there. Where you are right here, right now, in this moment, in this day. May things be more like justice and righteousness. And may we have peace. Now here's the thing. I say the term justice, and there's all sorts of ideas about what that is. I feel like I talked about this earlier today. I think I did. The term justice in Scripture is not like our term justice today. The way we say justice, it's all about judicial. In judicial system, somebody does you wrong, you want justice, and so you want something equally done to them. And to us, that's justice. That's eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. That's what that is. Now, I'm not speaking into that. But what I will speak into is what real justice is. At least according to the text, according to what the Jews would have understood. They really believed that justice was, you poke my eye out, I gotta poke your eye out. You killed my relative, we can come after you. Then Jesus comes on the scene. After all this violence and oppression and all the things that they suffered. See, when the time was right has a whole lot more to do with a lot more things than we think of. They were in the prime place to hear what Jesus had to say. And he says, but I tell you, that's not how you respond. It's not an eye or tooth for tooth, because justice in Scripture is all about helping out those who are less fortunate. And oftentimes, the people who are tied to the word justice are orphans and widows, which represent these people who are less fortunate, who don't have, who need the help. Remember, to be a woman in those days, you had to be married to be protected. And any marriage laws had to do with you being protected, period. They function in a quite different way. And so we might look at their laws and think, well, that's still outdated and still old and still things that we... But the reality was, that was a step up for them. That was actually a better place. And so while it didn't solve all the problems, think about how things were before the law was enacted and put into place. Yeah, this was a step up for them. You can't tell me that you don't look out in the world and see week after week the things that are happening. And you can just turn a blind eye to it and say everything's okay. Things are not the way that they should be. Something is missing. There is more to what's going on than what we realize. And Jesus, in telling his disciples to pray, realize the situation they find themselves in, their worldview, what's happening and what's going on with them. It's like they spent centuries trying to figure it out, what it's like to no longer be oppressed. Jesus says, here it is. Humility. Pray. Love. He says, pray this way. To the one who runs this house. We want this house run well. We want it run the way you run it. So may your kingdom come. May your will be done. Here, right now. As it is where you are. And so if you look out into the world and you see things, all you have to do is look at the way some people utilize the various resources and platforms we have in this world. How they choose to voice their opinions. I tell you, the way I see some Christians, how we express ourselves, just makes me wonder, what is going on here? And leaves no doubt in my mind why some people question and maybe don't even want to, like, if this is what it means to follow Jesus, my life's okay without that. So if you look at the world and you see how things are unfolding and it disturbs you, and you feel like something just is not right, but that it could be better, and that you could do something to help enact that change where you are. Yeah, just you. You can. Then this prayer is for you. It can help establish a whole new vision and lens through which to see the world. And so Jesus says, pray this way. Our Father in heaven, holy is your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth here right now. It's all about you. The question is, what role are you going to play? That's something we'll unpack over the next couple of weeks. Thank you guys for being here today. If you noticed, the first half of that prayer is all about acknowledging God. Your. But right underneath the surface is, hey, there's something that connects us. We have a responsibility here, right? We're right in the surface. So here's the thing. The next half of the prayer is another progression. And it's all about us. Give us. Forgive us. Lead us. And so while now the emphasis is going to be, I'm going to fall off this stage. The emphasis still, it doesn't matter how big you make it, I'm still going to be on the edge. The emphasis is on us, but right under the surface, there's God. There's God.